A fruit company once called the President of the United States and asked him to overthrow a foreign government to protect banana prices. He said yes. The company was called United Fruit. And between 1900 and 1960, it didn't just sell bananas, it owned countries. Literally. It owned the railways, the ports, the telegraph lines, and in some cases, the governments themselves. The term Banana Republic, which you've heard 1,000 times, maybe even worn on a shirt, was invented specifically to describe what United Fruit did to Central America. It wasn't an insult. It was a business model. Here's what nobody tells you. United Fruit didn't gain power through innovation or superior product. They gained it through a strategy so ruthless, so precise, that modern corporations still quietly study it. Stay with this. Because the twist at the center of this story will change how you look at every multinational company operating in a developing country right now. It starts with a railway and a man who couldn't get paid. Costa Rica needs a railway built through impossible jungle terrain to connect its coffee farms to the coast. They hire an American entrepreneur named Miner Cooper Keith. He loses 3 brothers to tropical disease building the thing. He nearly goes bankrupt twice. The Costa Rican government, flat broke, can't pay him. So instead, they give him 800,000 acres of land along the railway and a 99-year lease to operate it. Keith looks at this jungle land and makes a decision that seems almost absurd. He starts growing bananas alongside the tracks, using the railway to ship them north to America. Almost as an afterthought. That afterthought generates more money than the entire railway. By 1899, Keith merges with a Boston fruit importer named Andrew Preston. Together they form the United Fruit Company. Combined assets, $11 million. Combined land holdings across Central America, larger than the state of Connecticut. But here's where it gets strange. United Fruit doesn't just grow bananas. They look at these small, cash-strapped Central American nations, Guatemala, Honduras, Costa Rica, and they see something most businesses would overlook. They see leverage. These governments are desperate for investment, desperate for infrastructure, desperate for the tax revenue a major company brings. United Fruit walks in and says, "We'll build your ports, your telegraph lines, your roads. We'll modernize your country." The government sign, ecstatically. What they don't read carefully or don't care about yet are the terms. United Fruit gets tax exemptions, land at almost zero cost, control over the ports, and the quiet, unwritten understanding that their business interests come first. The banana is almost irrelevant at this point. It's the access that matters. By 1930, United Fruit controls 3.5 million acres across 7 countries. To put that in scale, that's larger than Belgium, one private American company. Owning land across an entire region of sovereign nations, they call their operation El Pulpo, the Octopus. Even their own employees use that name. And the mechanism, the actual system of control, is something a Harvard Business School professor would either admire or be horrified by, depending on his conscience. United Fruit operated what they called Enclave economies. They'd enter a country, carve out a massive zone, and make that zone entirely self-sufficient and entirely loyal to the company. Company housing, company stores, company hospitals, company schools teaching what United Fruit approved. Workers were paid in company scrip, a private currency redeemable only at company stores. You couldn't leave the system because the system was everywhere you'd go. Think of it like this. Imagine if Amazon didn't just sell you products but also owned your apartment, your grocery store, your doctor's office, and paid you in Amazon credits. Except you had no Prime membership, no customer service number, and no exit. That was a United Fruit banana plantation in 1920. Most people think colonialism ended with European empires. The truth is, United Fruit perfected a corporate version of it 20 years into the 20th century, while America was congratulating itself on not having colonies. Now, here's the twist. United Fruit's greatest weapon wasn't land or money. It was a PR firm. In the 1950s, facing growing resentment across Central America and a leftist government in Guatemala that threatened to redistribute some of their unused land to poor farmers, United Fruit hired Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays, the man who literally invented modern public relations, Sigmund Freud's nephew. The person who convinced American women to smoke cigarettes in public by calling them torches of freedom. United Fruit paid Bernays to convince the American public, and crucially, the American government, that Guatemala's elected president, Jacobo Arbenz, was a communist threat. Arbenz wasn't a communist. He was a democratically elected reformer who wanted to give landless peasants some of the 550,000 acres United Fruit owned, but wasn't even using. But Bernays ran a media campaign so effective that within 2 years, the CIA had a code name for the Guatemala operation, PBSUCCSS. June 1954, CIA-backed forces cross into Guatemala. President Arbenz, abandoned by his military, broadcasts his resignation live on radio. He walks to the Mexican embassy in his civilian clothes. United Fruit's unused land stays with United Fruit. This is the part that should make you sit back for a second. A democratically elected president, chosen by his people, running on a platform of giving land to the landless, was removed from power because a fruit company's profit margins were inconvenient. And it wasn't the first time. In Honduras in 1911, United Fruit literally funded a private coup to replace a president who wanted to tax banana exports. In Colombia in 1928, when plantation workers went on strike for basic rights, a 6-hour workday, Sundays off. Not being paid in company scrip, United Fruit worked with the Colombian government to suppress it. Colombian soldiers opened fire on a crowd of striking workers in the town of Ciénaga. How many died? Historians debate this. Official records say 47. The United Fruit workers who survived said the number was in the hundreds. Gabriel Garcia Marquez, who grew up hearing these stories, wrote the massacre into 100 Years of Solitude, multiplying the dead into the thousands as an act of literary fury. The actual number doesn't matter as much as this. Workers asking for Sundays off were shot, and the company's response was to lobby the U.S. State Department to call the Colombian government's action justified. Every banana eaten in America that year cost something the consumer never saw on the receipt. The unraveling begins not with justice, but with antitrust law. The U.S. Department of Justice finally goes after United Fruit for monopolistic practices. They're forced to break up, spin off assets, sell land. The empire starts shrinking. Then in 1974, the moment that crystallizes the entire story, United Fruit, now rebranded as United Brands, is caught paying a $1.25 million bribe to the president of Honduras in exchange for a reduction in banana export taxes. Eli Black, the company's CEO, discovers the scandal is about to become public. He walks into his office on the 44th floor of the Pan Am building in New York. He breaks his briefcase through the window and jumps. The scandal becomes known as Bananagate. The Honduras president is deposed. United Brands eventually becomes Chiquita. The name changes. The logo changes. A cheerful cartoon, Banana, replaces decades of corporate violence. Chiquita Brands International, the direct descendant of United Fruit, paid $25 million in 2007 after admitting to funding a Colombian paramilitary group designated as a terrorist organization by the U.S. government. This happened in 2007, not 1954. The Banana Republic template private company, weak government resource extraction. Military enforcement is today called corporate capture. It's happening right now in mining sectors across Africa, in agricultural concessions across Southeast Asia, in oil territories across the Middle East. The names change, the structure doesn't. And here's the data point that crystallizes it. The three countries United Fruit exploited most heavily, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, remain among the top sources of migration to the United States today. The instability United Fruit planted in those governments in the 1950s is still bearing fruit, different kind of fruit. Next time you peel a banana that costs 19 cents, ask yourself what the actual price was. Not the one on the sticker, the other one. The one paid in 1928 in Ciénaga. The one paid in 1954 in Guatemala City. The one still being paid by people migrating north from countries whose governments were hollowed out before their grandparents were born. Cheap products always have a second price. We just rarely see the invoice. If that hit different, drop a banana in the comments. Just that emoji. I want to see how many of you made it to the end.